Right then, today we come to you from one of the tourist hotspots in Bruges, and I kind of got quite used to doing this in public now, with all the tourists behind me and around me, and horses and carriages are going past. It's actually, Bruges is quite a fantastic place. It's so close to England. If you've never been, I suggest coming here. It's actually lovely, especially if you like sweet things like waffles and chocolate. Anyway, it's time for the final top 5 of the countries visited. When I spoke to the camera the other day in Amsterdam, I was a little bit down, tired, not down as in emotionally down, and quite frankly what I produced was quite crap. However, because I scrunched the paperwork up in my pocket, it got quite torn and become unreadable, so I wasn't going to redo it again. So it is what it is, and we will carry on again with the next 5 countries, starting with Sweden, the one after Finland that I visited. So, in Sweden, 2/3 of its landmass is covered by forests. Half of the land is owned by private people, a quarter by companies, leaving the other quarter, which is by far the largest single owner, by the state. Now, surprisingly enough, North Korea is going to get a mention here, which you wouldn't quite think North Korea would get a mention when you're talking about Sweden, but North Korea has actually got a 2.7 billion Swedish krona debt. Now, apparently, back in 1974, they agreed to buy and signed a deal for 1,000 Volvo cars, which they never actually fulfilled. So, every year, apparently, Sweden still sends them the bill. Now, Sweden is the 5th biggest country in Europe, with a land area of nearly 500,000 square kilometres. There are between 300,000 and 400,000 moose in Sweden, and if they were all herded together in one place, they would actually be bigger than its biggest city. In 1979, it was the first country in the world to ban spanking, or should I say smacking. Although I should think in a consensual relationship, the Swedes been a little bit open-minded like the Danes and possibly the Dutch. I should think spanking's probably allowed. Swedes can be proud of their donations to charity, because their actual donations to charity represents 1% of their gross GDP. So they actually do a lot of good in the world. Now, their recycling is so efficient that they are actually importing waste from neighbouring countries and actually turning a profit from it. Now, here's a Swedish word I've got to try and pronounce. Value Koppargruva is the oldest limited country in the world and was founded in Sweden in 1288. Since the Ice Age, which was 10,000 years ago, the land in the north of Sweden has risen by 800 metres. Now that's rising at a rate still now at 9.2 millimetres per year. Whereas on balance in the south of the country is actually sinking into the sea by 0.5 millimetre a year. Like Finland, as I mentioned the other day, like Finland, Sweden also has the right to roam. So apart from a private garden, I looked into this a bit further, apart from an actual private residential garden in the suburbs of a city, if you're a landowner with farmland, which you're allowed to walk around the edges of, or forests and stuff, you can walk wherever you like. Right, so some quick interesting facts, maybe not interesting, it's entirely up to you to decide of course, about Sweden. Gay relationships have been legal since 1944, so basically the second the Germans got their asses kicked out, gay relationships were legal. 86% of the population live in cities, 52% of energy is completely renewable, 95% of all its waste is recycled, there are 95,700 lakes, and the capital, which is Stockholm, which houses 1 million people, is actually 1% of its total population of 10 million people. So there you go, so that's Sweden done. Moving on, the next country, another horse. The next country visited was Denmark. Now I can tell you Denmark, I went on the train into Denmark, got out of Denmark, and the first thing I noticed was the sheer amount of bicycles, which I shall explain. Denmark is full of bicycles, and I've seen them in their capital of Copenhagen. Now, when I actually got off the train, there was bicycles literally everywhere, all around the square. They had a special racking system that actually allowed the bicycles to be racked 3 tiers high, and they were private bicycles, they weren't rental bicycles. And yeah, I was just stunned, absolutely stunned. I have got pictures on my mobile phone, so if I get time when I come to edit this, I might stick some of those pictures on. So yeah, and I think the reason why it's so popular with cyclists is because it's hard to actually find a hill in Denmark, because in Denmark its highest point is only 170 metres high, which makes it a fraction taller than the Lincolnshire Wolds, which, believe me, is not that particularly high. Archaeological evidence shows that, and this is Sweden, shows that Denmark has been inhabited since the year 12,500 BC, so a fucking long time ago. The Danish flag has been acknowledged by other countries since the year 1219. Healthcare and education is totally free. Now, there's one you would not have thought of. Some people might know this actually, I have heard of it before. Greenland, you know, that massive, great big ice-covered country, sort of like in the middle of the Atlantic, North Atlantic, sort of between Canada and Iceland, right? Greenland is actually in the Kingdom of Denmark. Between the years of 1880 and 1920, 10% of the entire population of Denmark emigrated to the United States. Now, here's something I noticed actually in a lot of areas of Europe, okay? So, the Danes are renowned for, when they get to a road crossing and they press the button, they actually wait for the green man to come up before they cross, even if there isn't a car in sight. Now, I experienced this in several places in Europe, and I kind of followed suit because I was thinking, is it a law, or, you know, am I going to get into trouble if I cross the road? And basically, after sort of 5 weeks of it, I kind of got a little bit bored, and I in a rush to get to a hotel, and a rush to get to a station, and I'm spending so much time travelling. I just thought, oh, you know, F this. You know, these people wouldn't get anywhere if they tried that in London. So, quite frankly, I started just crossing the road. However, I have found out that actually jaywalking is actually illegal in Denmark, and you can get a €130 fine for doing so. So I'm very lucky that I haven't actually lost all my money from being fined for jaywalking. Now there's another funny one. In tradition, if you are unmarried at the age of 25 in Denmark, on your birthday you will get cinnamon thrown over you. I don't know why, but you just will. Danes have their own word. Now I will spell it out for you. It's H-Y-G-G-E, hygge, meaning that cosy feeling of togetherness, or that cosy feeling of being by oneself. So that kind of relates to Asperger's in a little way. Anywhere in Denmark is no more than 52 kilometres from the sea. And some quick facts for you. On average, Danes eat 42 sausages per capita per year. No word. They have no word for please. It's not in their language. There are more pigs than people. Lego comes from Denmark. So parents, when you climb out of bed in the middle of the night and you tread on that Lego brick, you're like, oh, fucking hell, you know who to blame. You can blame the Danes. Right, so it's a population of 5.5 million people, and like the Swedish, they are Lutheran by religion. Woo! Would help if you didn't throw your script everywhere. Shows it's live and unedited. Right, so where was we? The next country. Oh yes. Germany. Now, Germany, I must admit, I've been there a few times. I like Germany. I have a lot of respect for the Germans. However, it is fairly easy to take the piss out of them. Oh, and another horse and cart. Anyway, so the Germans have a population of 81 million people, and it is increasing. And it's not increasing necessarily from childbirth, of course it will do, but it's also increasing because of their open border policy to immigration. Something of which I have seen with my own eyes when I stayed in Hamburg, which is absolutely full of African prostitutes. And believe me, it was one of the most scariest nights of my life. Oh, I didn't hire an African prostitute, but to walk to my hotel, I had to go down a street 200 yards long with pimps and black African prostitutes, and they were even sitting on the doorstep of my hotel. And I spoke to a couple of people that I know now around Europe, and including Germans, and they were absolutely wetting themselves after, because the Germans do actually have quite an open view and an open policy on prostitution, but that would be registered prostitutes in registered brothels, not the street whores, refugees that are probably full of dirty diseases like HIV and everything that have come from Africa. So yes, it was a bit of a scary night with them constantly hassling me when I'm trying to go out and get something to eat. Anyway, moving on. Germany. 1/3 of Germany is covered in forest, and it has over 400 zoos, which makes it the country with the most zoos in the world. 65% of the road network is actually autobahns, which autobahns have no speed limit. Although I do know from not exactly personal experience, but looking into their laws in the past, that if you exceed the recommended speed limit and you have an accident, it is automatically your fault. Whether it was your fault or not, it's automatically your fault. Not quite so sure what happens if there's two of you in an accident and you were both exceeding the speed limit. Maybe it's both your fault, 50-50, who knows. Right, in Germany, Germany has 2,100 castles and 1,500 types of beer. It is the 7th largest country in Europe, with a land area of 137,847 square kilometres, of which 3,011 square kilometres are covered by water. Berlin's largest train station, well, Berlin has the largest train station in Europe, and I've been there, I've seen it, and it has many tracks coming in the bottom. It's where two major sections of railway line cross, one going north to south, one going east to west. So the one that goes north to south is in the bottom, and then you have 3 layers of shops. It's a bit like Lakeside, and then at the top you have the one going east to west, going over the top of the shops. It's a phenomenal building, and it's a phenomenal place. It's so clean, so friendly, and everyone speaks English. So yes, it has the largest train station in Europe, and Berlin is 9 times bigger than Paris and has more bridges than Venice. Germany is divided into 16 states and subdivided into 403 districts. It's one of the most populated countries in the world, and as previously mentioned, getting more and more populated due to its open border policy. German borders 9 other countries. Now, I'm not going to list them because you can look on a map yourself. However, that's quite handy for the Germans because it means it's really quick for them to invade people. It has EU's largest economy and is the 4th largest economy in the world. The first printed book ever was printed in German, and Germany, which is literally mad, and I don't mean literally mad, I mean literacy mad. They're mad about books, there you go. I can't pronounce my words properly this morning, it's probably too much caffeine. Right, so they're mad about books, and they publish 94,000 new titles every year. Now, Germany was the first to adopt daylight saving hours, and is the first to produce a magazine which was printed in 1663. The longest word ever to be published was in German and is 79 characters long. I haven't written it down because there is no chance on earth I would ever be able to pronounce it. There are over 1,000 types of sausage in Germany. Germans are only outdone by the Irish for drinking beer. being the second biggest consumer in the world. Which one assumes that means Ireland is the biggest consumer of beer in the world, which means they must be the biggest pissheads. The last fact about Germany, I'm not sure if I've mentioned the war or anything, you know, don't want to take the piss out of the Germans for that, you know, it's done and dusted 70 years ago, but just in case you didn't know, they lost. Right, moving on. Two more to go. Holland. Ha, the Dutch. Now the Dutch, somewhere I know a fair amount about. I've actually lived in Amsterdam for 2-3 months. So I've spent many times in Holland and Dam and its surrounding areas. So the Dutch are on average the tallest nation in the world. Half of the country is at 1 metre or below sea level. About every 15 years on average, when the canal systems freeze up strong enough to hold the weight of many people, they have the largest ice skating race in the world, which is a 24-hour ice skating race where the competitors have to actually skate 200 kilometres or 120 miles in that 24-hour period. They are the largest consumer of licorice in the world. It is, Holland, the first country to legalise same-sex marriage. Most of Amsterdam, the capital, is built on 12-metre piles made of wood. They have the lowest incidence of lactose intolerance in the world. There are more bicycles than people, although from actual personal experience I would say there is not as many bicycles in Holland as there are in Denmark. Amsterdam has 1,281 bridges and a population of 820,000 people out of the 17.2 million people that actually live in the entire Holland. Entire Netherlands, I should have said, really. There is a pub called, the bin man's arrived. There is a pub called The Three Sisters in Holland, which is the biggest pub, and you guessed it, in the world. Right, on the first Monday of every month, across the entire country, there is a flood alarm that goes off. Amsterdam Airport is actually 4 metres below sea level. Now, it's a Dutch word I'm going to try and pronounce. I will probably get it completely wrong, but it is Rokjesdag, or in English, Skirt Day. Right, now, Skirt Day is the first day of spring, because they like to think the spring has come when the ladies actually start wearing short skirts again and get their legs out. Now, while on the subject of Holland, and lastly, there are roughly 25,000 registered prostitutes in Holland, of which roughly half of them are working at any one time in 6,000 locations. Now, out of those 25,000 registered, 90% of them are female, 5% of them are male, and 5% of them are she-male. So I'm assuming that means transgender. Right then, so lastly, Belgium, where we are now. It's hard to find information about Belgium, to believe it or not. Right, so here we go, Belgium. Belgium got its name from the Romans. Julius Caesar, when he came to this part of Europe, noted that the tribe in the Celts, now the Celts would have been classed as the whole of the northern part of Europe, he noticed the tribe of the Celts in this area were different to the rest, so he called them Romans as Belgica, which is where the name Belgium comes from. Antwerp, its second largest city, Brussels being its largest and the capital, Antwerp, its second largest city, is the diamond capital of the world, with 84% of all rough diamonds in the world passing through Antwerp. Peter Minuit in 1612 purchased Manhattan Island, New York basically, for the Dutch West Indian Trading Company for 60 guilders, which is equivalent of $1,500 in today's money. At 541 days long, the Belgians hold the Guinness World Record for the country to have no government in power after the collapse of the federal elections on June the 13th in 2010, which is, oh my God, where's the bin lorry going now? Which is, anyway, the preceding owners of that record was actually the Iraqis just after the Iraq War. But I believe they were only out of power, out of government for 211 days. There's a lot of cheering going on. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe someone's just got married. Who knows? Right, to carry on. Here's something you didn't expect me to say. Cricket. Cricket. Now, talking about Belgium, you wouldn't expect me to say the word cricket, but here we go. Cricket, the game played by only one European country, the English, actually traces its origins back to the Flemish, which were brought over to England by the immigrants in the 16th century. In 1990, the king Baudouin stepped down, basically abdicated for 36 hours out of conscience in order to allow the Belgian Parliament to pass the abortion law. It was the second country in the world to decriminalise homosexuality in the early 1960s. It has a population of 11.4 million people, 175,000 of them living in the capital of Brussels. And the highest point at Botterange is 694 metres, and that is it. Thank you very much. We are done with the countries in Europe. Now, there are two countries that have not been mentioned on this list. One is Luxembourg and one is, not Lithuania, sorry, one is Luxembourg and one is Liechtenstein, because they are both countries that are so small you take 2 steps and you're across them. Now, I will do some of those when I do a special on England. So, watch this space because there is one more video coming up about the countries and I will include them then. So, from me, from this very busy and potentially noisy area of Bruges, I'm going to go and start recording something else somewhere else. And have a good day.